You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
Alrighty, welcome into the... Wow, I had some massive feedback going on my end there, so let's try that again. Welcome in to the latest episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. This is the Friday night show. Week 1 is upon us here. I'm Derek, and joined as always by your co-host Kevin. How we doing tonight?
I needed that, man. It's been a day. The JOB wore me down a little bit today, so I needed a good laugh. Thank you. But no, I'm glad, man. We're kicking off our Friday night series, right? So super excited about this. For those of you just tuning in or catching this on replay, make sure you hit like and subscribe so that way you get notifications when this comes on, because this is where we go over the game lines, right? The spreads, the over-unders. We touch a couple props. We will answer any and all fantasy football questions along the way. Start, sit, waiver wire, trade questions, you name it. We will lend our advice, right? Because ultimately they're your teams. You guys have to manage them, but we are more than happy to help and put some input in along the way. We've had some great commentary from the fan base year to date so far through draft season and even up through this week in all sorts of different ways. I mean, we were even answering Facebook Messenger questions, which were great questions, right? I mean, the guy that we were helping out, I hope it does help. He was struggling a little bit, but I feel like we started pointing him in the right direction. And I think we turned a team that was probably a little subpar, if everybody's being honest about it, into, I think, at least a contender. He's not going to be a walkover at this point. So, we love to help out. So hit us up, let us know. We will get these questions answered in between games and with us covering there. But, D, how are you doing, man? It's Friday night. What are your thoughts and opinions here?
It is Friday nights, and this is, I really do enjoy the Friday night show where we're going through and we're talking heavy on, helping folks submit, when they submit their questions in the chat here and going through all of that, but also getting to talk on the betting side of things and, how we're kind of looking at some of these slates and looking to improve upon what I did last year and hoping that we can, it was a pretty decent season last year for us, hoping that we can take that to the next level here again, right? Like I was going through, getting ready for the show, and I happened to look back, and I know on all of the calls that I made last year, whether there was spreads, over-unders, prop bets, there was 600 more than 680 calls made on this Friday night show throughout the course of the season, and was just about sitting at a 55% hit rate on that. And all of those guys were sitting there at most of them at the 110 mark. So we're turning positive units and looking to improve upon that this year and see if we can't really rock and roll that even more so. So that's fun. We are 7 subscribers away from the 1,000 subscriber mark, and so that's one of the big things that we've been trying to do is keep this podcast free for all the listeners, all of that. Everybody listening knows that we don't charge a subscription route or charge people to look at our rankings or get our thoughts or any of that kind of stuff like a lot of other folks out there do, and where you've got to buy a membership or anything like that. So the best place to support this independent podcast is the youtube.com/@goodoldboysff. Head on over there, click that subscribe button, ring that bell, because here in about 7 more subscribers, we can monetize that YouTube channel without costing the viewers and listeners watching anything on that. And that's one of the goals that we've had going forward for a long time. So we're closing in on it. So it'll be a good season, be a lot of fun here. And looking forward to tonight. There were some, the season kicked off last night with the Detroit and the Kansas City. And for those of y'all listening to the Tuesday show, Kevin and I gave y'all some calls on that one. Both of us going 2-1 on that one on that game last night. So already kicking the season off to a pretty good start here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a good game. It was the game script was a little bit different, I think, than some people intended. Obviously, with Kelsey being out, the Chiefs kind of had to revamp their game plan a little bit in basically a 48-hour turnaround. I think you could tell that a little bit by some of the execution. Low-hanging fruit, right? Everybody's talking about Kadarius Toney, right? Low-hanging fruit, the 3 drops, the one that led to the pick 6. That Chiefs defense really only gave up 14 points. But that wasn't the only thing, right? It just, quite frankly, Isaiah Pacheco wasn't as effective as I thought he would have been on the ground. Clyde Edwards-Helaire actually had a better yards per touch, clip than Pacheco. Pacheco was at 2.4. CEH was at 3.35. I believe is what he was. So neither one of them were overly efficient. And that's kind of a bummer, right? They weren't able to take some pressure off of Patrick Mahomes because they weren't very efficient on the ground. Bell kind of vultured that touchdown away from Noah Gray, if you will, right? Like we thought Gray would kind of be the answer, and sure enough, it's your blocking tight end who falls in the end zone with the touchdown. But seeing the rookie, Rashee Rice, that was interesting, right? We saw him. Sky Moore kind of fell flat. There wasn't, he underwhelmed. Kadarius Toney underwhelmed. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, kind of the veteran leader on that team, completely underwhelmed. It was a different type of product without Travis Kelce kind of taking everyone's attention towards him and still being able to perform on top of it. But credit to the Lions. They did what they had to do. They absolutely did what they had to do. David Montgomery did exactly what we thought he was going to do, which I thought was awesome, right? He had 21 carries. 21 carries. He ran 20 routes in that game, so he was highly active, right? Highly active. I know all the fans and the fantasy football people might be a little jaded that, Gibbs didn't get his fair share.
Not if you were listening to this show all off season. You weren't.
That's right. We told y'all, like, it's not that Gibbs isn't dynamic, right? We're not doubting the athleticism, but understanding the way that Dan Campbell wants to run this team and what this team is built on at the moment. They are built on running between the tackles behind a great offensive line and play action to set up, or that gets set up because of the running game, right? That is what they're best at. Gibbs will continue to see the field, right? But his snap percentage, I think he's on the field for like 18% of the snaps just last night. That was it. Now, every time he was on, Michaels and Collinsworth commented on it, right? So, you guys absolutely knew if you're watching the game, every time Gibbs touched the field, yes, he broke 4 tackles. 3 of them were on one play, guys. Like, let's not.
Actually, I thought I saw a stat that he hit another couple of missed tackles out there as well, like where he didn't necessarily break him, but he forced the guy to miss.
And it could be.
So the percentage was astronomical.
He is quick. He is lightning in a bottle. They will find ways to work him in. He still needs to work on his pass pro, right? Which is part of the reason that David Montgomery stayed in. And, in big games, don't give the rookie a chance to fail, right? The first game, let him work his way in. He had success. Now we can build upon that success. The Lions got the win, so the whole team can build upon this. Don't freak out if you're a Jahmyr Gibbs owner, but understand your expectations, because that second or third, depending on what round you got him in pick, that you spent on him in redraft leagues, he's not going to return that in the first half of the season. Like, you hope he starts getting into the game a little bit more in the second half, because things will open up if Jameson Williams able to come back healthy and kind of keep the safeties honest between Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're not going to be able to load the box, which means you're going to be able to do some more things, get Gibbs outside in mismatches in space. So you got to be patient. Don't overreact. But we told you he wasn't going to return that value. So just be aware. Overall, good game, though. Like, congratulations to the Chiefs. I thought the biggest slap in the face to to the Lions. Excuse me. Congratulations to the Lions. But I thought the biggest slap in the face was one of the last things that Al Michaels said before the telecast was over was, well, this game for the Lions might have an asterisk because Travis Kelce and Chris Jones weren't playing, but they got the win nonetheless. Like, that's such hogwash. Like, he should be ashamed. And I know he got lit up on Twitter because of that, but that was a BS comment. Like, the Lions went out there, they traveled to Kansas City, and they earned it. They earned it. They took that interception back for a touchdown. They got those touchdown drives when they needed to, one in each half. Like, they kept Mahomes in check and forced bad situations to where he didn't have any success down the field. Right? It was a lot of run after catch stuff, mid-range, but there wasn't deep targets. And the Lions weren't without their own shortcomings. I mean, how many times does Marvin Jones need to drop the ball? But no one wants to talk about him dropping it. They only want to talk about Kadarius Toney. Like, you can go tit for tat here. So the Lions absolutely earned that, and I say congratulations to them and hats off to you Detroit fans because you guys have been through a world of suffering and a lot of bad football. You guys have something to be proud of as of last night.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very much the thing, right? Like, you can try and put every asterisk and all that you want on it. The fact of the matter is you still kept Patrick Mahomes to 20 points. At the end of the day, you kept Patrick Mahomes to 20 points. Yeah.
And you're 1-0.
Yeah.
You're 1-0. Oh, right. I mean, 20 points is great. If you only score 17, you don't feel as good about that. But you're 1-0. Like,
right.
Take the win, be happy, and move on. Build upon it.
Right.
Build upon it. I'm such a huge Dan Campbell fan. Like,
yes.
The more I listen to him and the more I watch him and how he coaches and celebrates that team from the sideline, like, he is absolutely a guy that, as I'm going to say former athlete, right? Like, I played Bush League softball. Like, I drink beers on Friday nights right after work and go play softball. So I'm not saying I'm an athlete anymore, but I would absolutely, when in my playing days, run through a wall for a guy like Dan Campbell. Like, I am all about how he's coaching right now. Like, right. Kudos to him.
He's a galvanizer, right? Like, he's a guy that folks just kind of rally around, and they all kind of march to that beat, and it is something else to see how Detroit's kind of been revived here in the last couple of seasons as well. So
yeah,
absolutely
he strikes me as that no nonsense yet players coach.
Like, exactly.
A weird feel. Like, he's not messing around and that he means business, but at the same time, you will go fight for him. Like, you will do what he's asking you to do because you're believing. And those Lions players who have been around for the last 2-3 seasons since Dan Campbell got there, and those slow starts, like, I think that shows. Like, they are Campbell's guys. Like, this backs up everything that we were thinking, along with a lot of people, right? We are not the only ones on this Detroit bandwagon, but this is the first time in how long, Derek, we've spent any longer than, a team breakdown on Detroit for lack of time. But I'm giving them their airtime, damn it. They deserve it. And I'm rooting for them. I'm not saying I'm jumping on the bandwagon, but I will root for them because I like Dan Campbell. I want them to be successful. I think it's good for the NFL to kind of change it up and let Detroit have some, shuffle this up in the NFC a little bit, because we need another team in that conference to kind of step up and play, because right now all people are talking about are Eagles, Cowboys, 49ers, and then AFC, everything AFC. So right. Bring on the Lions, toss them in the ring. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it was one of those two that defense looked much improved from where we saw them leave off last year, right? Like, when the Lions were winning games last year down the stretch, it was because they were in shootouts. It wasn't because they were, like that defense bottled up the Kansas City Chiefs and made that a winnable game where they didn't have to put up 40 points to try and do it, right? So lots of fun there. Real quick before we get into some of our first game action here, we do have a question coming in from the YouTube on one of the other videos there. Slayton or Odell this week for fantasy?
Oh, Odell. I mean, Odell. And I know they said he had the ankle issue, but then you followed up and there's reports he's playing soccer on the sideline. Like, he's going to be fine. Odell's going to be fine. I trust his veteran presence. I trust that he knows how to prepare himself for these games. And being a Georgia fan, I've seen Todd Monken's offense, and I think Odell can have success. Slayton, you're hoping for a big play and a touchdown. Odell, I think you can get there with, 5 receptions, 75 yards. Right. Something of that nature. He may not fall in the end zone, but it is 10 to 12 points that I think you could be pretty happy with.
Well, there's a good chance that Slayton's the 4th or 5th guy on
he's the Giants. 5th option, right? Like, I think you're spot on. Like, I think he's the 5th option on that team right now.
Right. As I'd put obviously Saquon ahead of that. Darren Waller, I think, is gonna be in there. Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt, I think both of those guys have kind of worked themselves into that role. Hodgins has kind of worked that. So he might
Sterling
even be
Shepard, right? Shepard's healthy, and Daniel Jones does like Sterling Shepard when healthy. So we're on the same page. Back up.
Yeah.
Let him ride.
All right, there we go. And then we have Mr. COD Reaper. Welcome back in, Mr. COD Reaper. Always enjoyed those posts last year. Hey, welcome, man. It's good to see the see football back and the best fantasy football coaches. The good old boys were back, and football's back. Saying thanks for helping him with his roster last year, and he's going to keep us posted. Absolutely. Let us know how that season is rocking and rolling. And very much enjoy all of the back and forth and helping folks kind of get their stuff ready to go here for the week to come here. And if you guys have any roster questions, start sits, things like that, throw them in the chat. We'll get to them. But Kevin, you ready to start breaking down some fantasy slates and some NFL Week 1 slates?
Let's do it, man.
All right, let's go ahead and rock and doing the roll. First up, Week 1, we got the Carolina Panthers.
I like that graphic. New graphics. Kudos to the tech guy. I like that.
All righty. We aim to please. So Week 1, Carolina Panthers, Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta is favored by 3.5. The over under on this one, 39.5. Thoughts on this matchup?
I'm taking Carolina to cover this. It's that hook that bothers me, right? Carolina they were stingy on defense. They weren't great, but they were stingy. I think both these teams are going to want to run the ball. It's going to be a short game. So I'm also taking the under here, right? So I'm taking Carolina to keep it within a field goal. I do want Atlanta on the money line. And then I'm going to take the under for this game.
Fair enough. This is one of those that I have a hard time believing that we're going to see much in the way of offensive play on this one. So wouldn't surprise me when it's all said and done and you see like this one here. I can get right there with you thinking this is kind of a field goal game, but I do think that Atlanta finds a way to win this one. And really I think this is gonna be like a 21-17 type of matchup here. So I'm going to take the Falcons for the spread. I'm going to take the under. One of the props that I really liked in this one, besides every passer going under on their yardage, but I'm gonna go with a Miles Sanders over 55.5 rush yards.
Fair enough. I'm gonna go with Drake London over 52.5 receiving yards. There's not too many clear targets in Atlanta in the passing game. Drake London is clearly target A for Desmond Ridder based off of what we saw last year. So I'm saying he goes over 52.5.
Fair enough. All righty, heading on into the Week 1 matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals, Cleveland Browns. Cincy favored by 2.5, over under 47.5 on this one. Thoughts on this matchup? That's one.
You're good. I was mumbling to myself anyway. I'm gonna take Cleveland here as for the home upset. Cleveland's a tough place to play. Cleveland has played Joe Burrow extremely tight over his last 4 starts against them. And I think their defense is improved. Joe Burrow missed the preseason because of the calf strain. So I'm feeling Cleveland here to cover this 2.5 and quite possibly win outright. So I like Cleveland. I'm also taking the under. First game jitters. Let these quarterbacks work some things out. We've heard rumors that Watson's still rusty. We'll figure that out. Plus, we know that they love to run the ball. Joe Burrow didn't play in the preseason. Says he's going to be fine, but I want to see how that looks. So I'm going to say under 47.5. Wouldn't surprise me if we hit around 44, 45 points for this game.
Yeah, I could see that. I do think that this one here, since he wins this thing by a field goal, the Bengals throughout their 14 wins last year, every one of them was by more than 3 points, by 3 points or more. So I'm going to take that and let that continue to ride there. I do agree with you, though, that the under is coming to play on this thing. This one very much feels like it could be a 24-21 type of matchup when it's all said and done. Not going to surprise me on that one. The prop that I'm going with here, right? And if you were listening to the Tuesday show or the Pine and Shine videos that got released, I was saying that David Njoku was my Pine of the week in the tight end category. And I think he's going to go under 35.5 receiving yards here.
Fair enough. I'm going to go with the Joe Burrow rushing stat because of this calf injury. And I feel like this is kind of built-in money in the bag. Joe Burrow under 9.5 rushing yards. I do not think he leaves that pocket today or on Sunday.
I could see that one. I like that call a lot. Another one that I almost went here, so we'll go with a bonus on this one. Another one I almost went with was the Deshaun Watson over 26.5 rushing yards on this one. I could see him easily clearing about 30 yards in this one. So there you go. We get a bonus one in there too. All righty. Let's go ahead and head on into the week 1 matchup between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts. Jacksonville favored by 5. Over under on this one is 45. Thoughts on this one?
Taking the Jags, and I like the under in this one as well. I need to see what Richardson and this Colts offense is really going to do. We know Jonathan Taylor's out. We know Richardson was pretty inconsistent in the preseason. And as much as we like Jacksonville, first game of the season, I'm not convinced that they're ready to just light the scoreboard up. I think they have this game in hand early and kind of coast to a divisional win here to start the season. So I'm going to take Jacksonville minus the 5, but I am going to take the under in this game because I don't think the Colts can score enough points to get plus 45.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that this is going to be a Jacksonville cover. I think that we're going to see the under here. This is a game that I just have a hard time believing that the Colts are going to get to about, more than maybe a touchdown or two. Like I have a hard time believing that they're going to get to like the 20-point mark, which the implied point total on this game is, Jacksonville 25, Indianapolis 20. I just don't see Indianapolis getting to that 20-point mark. So I do see Jacksonville getting to about the 20-point mark though. So this one here, call it 24-17, I think is how this one probably ends up there. So like Jacksonville, like the under. I do like Travis Etienne on a receiving prop here. So Travis Etienne over 14.5 receiving yards.
I am going to take Anthony Richardson under 192.5 passing yards.
Alrighty, I like it. So that one there was another one I was looking at pretty heavily. Alrighty, let's go ahead and head on into the next matchup here. We got week 1, Tampa Bay Buccaneers facing off against the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota favored by 6 in this one. The over-under is 45. Thoughts on this one?
This might be one of the harder games that I picked, just because I am a believer in Tampa Bay's defense, but I'm not a believer in anything Tampa Bay's doing on offense right now. So I'm going to take Minnesota to cover the 6. I think they win by a touchdown. I'm going to take the under. I don't think it's a high-scoring affair. I just don't know where the points come from Tampa Bay, much like Indianapolis. So taking the under, I don't see this game getting to 45, but I do think the Vikings can win by a touchdown and start the season off 1-0.
Alrighty. I I see this one a little bit different. I'm going to take Tampa Bay to cover the 6 on this one. I think this is going to be about a field goal game. I do think it's one that we can actually see the over on it. And a lot of that has to do with, as much as we're not necessarily fans of Tampa Bay's offense this year, Minnesota's defense is just about as bad. So this is very much a game where, bad offense meets bad defense, good offense meets good defense, and how that's going to play out there. So kind of a strength on strength and weakness against weakness for these two teams. So I do think that we're going to be able to see this thing get to about a 24-21 type of matchup where Minnesota wins it, but Tampa Bay covers. I do like the Rachaad White to go over 44.5 rushing yards.
For game one, I'm going to say Kirk Cousins goes under 270.5 passing. I think the back end for Tampa Bay is going to be pretty stingy, get a little bit of pass rush. I'm not fully convinced that Minnesota offensive line is that drastically improved. And this is it's basically the same front seven that gave Dak Prescott hell the last 2 years on opening night. So I think Cousins struggles just a little bit. And I don't think he reaches that 270 mark. That's a pretty high total for week one.
You're not kidding. And actually, you know what? I've got a bonus one for a prop on this one here as well. Has to do with Rachaad White as well. He's got the check down monster in Baker Mayfield playing quarterback for him. I think that he's going to go over 2.5 receptions in this game there as well. So I like that one there. I had to throw it out there. I liked it so much. All right, let's go ahead and look at another one here. We've got the Tennessee Titans facing off against the New Orleans Saints. We have our first graphical error here. Anyway, plugging along. The Tennessee Titans facing off against the New Orleans Saints. The Saints are favored by 3. The over/under on this one is 41. Thoughts on this matchup?
I'm taking New Orleans to cover. I wouldn't be surprised if this game was a push, with it being right at 3. You don't get the hook in this game. But nevertheless, I'm going to take I did the same thing after reading the graphic. Taking New Orleans to cover. I think New Orleans defense is going to shut down Tennessee's offense pretty well, right? The offensive line still has issues. I think New Orleans has the last few seasons been pretty stout against the run. So I think they're going to be able to keep Derrick Henry in check here to start the season. And we're going to see what DeAndre Hopkins in this offense looks like against a decent secondary, right? New Orleans' problems have not necessarily been on defense these last few years. It's been quarterback play, consistent quarterback play. So I like New Orleans, but I am taking the under in this game as well. I think it's going to be kind of a defensive battle here to start the season and a low-scoring affair.
Yeah, this is one that when you look at that total and you see 41 as the total on that, and you look at that going, man, that even seems high. Like I'm right there with you. 41 seems high on this one, so I'm going to take the under. I do like the Saints to cover. I'm same boat you are. I think that this one's going to ultimately be kind of a push. One of the props though that I do like is Chris Olave to go over 4.5 receptions in this game.
Sorry, I'm struggle busting here. I'm going to say Derrick Henry is under 78.5 to start the season. I think the Saints are able to keep him in check to start out.
I like that one. I almost went that one. I felt so good about that one too. So, alrighty, let's go ahead and head over to our next matchup here. We have the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. San Francisco favored by 2.5. Over or under on this one is 41. Thoughts on this game?
Another game I'm taking the under. I think this is going to be a pretty grimy defensive battle. I'm taking Pittsburgh because they're at home. But this was another game, much like the Minnesota-Tampa Bay game, where I had to think about this one for a second. Like, it feels kind of weird picking against the Niners, but I do think them flying east and going, East Coast, 2 time zones for the first game of the season, trying to work out the kinks. Brock Purdy coming back, playing full game with this repaired elbow. It wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't surprise me if this is one of my misses, but I'm going to take Pittsburgh to cover to cover the 2.5.
Fair enough. I've also got Pittsburgh covering this one. Wouldn't surprise me if they managed to sneak out a win at home. I'm just not feeling quite that bullish on the money line to make that call there. So I'll take the points for Pittsburgh. And again, right, this is one of those that this is defense on defense type of matchup here. And so I'm going to take the under as well. So one of those that not going to surprise me. We look up and we see this one end 17 to 18, 17, 18 type of deal. Like this one here is going to be a close game. It's probably going to come down to a last second field goal to ultimately put somebody over the top on this one. One of the props though that I really liked on this one was Najee Harris to go over 11.5 receiving yards.
Like that. I'm going to take George Pickens to go over 42.5 receiving yards. I think we're going to see the emergence of him being the true alpha on this team.
Fair enough. I like that call. Alrighty, next matchup here. Let's hit that one up. We got the Arizona Cardinals facing the Washington Commanders. The Commanders favored by 7. The over-under is 38.
Again, another game I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing a push, but I'm going to take the Commanders to cover. If we were a little bit more sure about the quarterback play, I think this would be an easy 7-point cover. But nevertheless, Washington to cover by 7. But I'm taking the under again. I'm not convinced that the Cardinals are going to be able to do much on offense. And I think the Commanders, once they get that lead, I think they're going to be pretty happy to try and tag team Gibson and Brian Robinson and just kind of run the clock out. They don't want to put Sam Howell in a bad situation. They're not going to ask him to do too much within this offense, so they're just going to lean on the defense after what I think is an early lead and kind of, play old school football here. So I'm taking the under, but I am taking Washington to cover.
Yeah, I'm going to also take Washington to cover. I don't know that Arizona is going to get out of single digits in points for them. Like they're just right.
I can see 10 because of a turnover in a short field, right? Like James Conner's still going to see a ton of work. I bet the tight ends. I think both Ertz and Trey McBride. I think we're going to see some decent work here. They're going to have a tough time, right? I mean, it's just unproven quarterback play, different defensive schemes. Like Washington's defense is not as good as it was 3 years ago by any stretch, but they're good enough to, just kind of put the blocks on here for week 1.
Yeah. So I am going to take Washington. I'm going to take the under. Like this one here, not going to surprise me if this one ends 17-10, 17-7. Like that's where I think this thing's going to kind of come through to play. One of the props that I really liked, right? You mentioned Washington kind of leaning on their run game. I think you're absolutely right. Brian Robinson, I've got him going over 58.5 rushing yards. That's 2.
Damn it. I'm going to go with this counterpart. I think Antonio Gibson's going to go over 30.5 rushing yards.
I like that one so much that I don't know if you were looking at the show doc here this morning or not, but had you looked at it around probably noon our time, you would have seen Antonio Gibson's prop on that one. No. Like I was like, I'm going to go that route. And then I'm like, I'm going to go B-Rob. I feel like being a little bit, I feel like taking that one. So no, I liked it that much that I was going to go that route. So I
feel better about my pick even more than now. But no, I didn't happen to see it. I was getting my teeth kicked in at work, unfortunately. But looking at that one, I think that this is going to be a little bit more balanced, right? We heard a lot of good things about Gibson this offseason. Ron Rivera went out of his way to compliment him, and Rivera is not typically a coach that hands out compliments easily. So with him doing that, it made me pay attention, right? And we're going to see if talk's cheap as the season unfolds. But for game 1 and how this is set up, I think both players are probably going to hit their over. And quite frankly, it could be pretty easily.
Yeah. Well, we've got a bunch more games on the slate to get to. But before we do, I wanted to take a moment while we're sitting here looking at the Cardinals, all of that. Did you happen to see some of the comments that Caleb Williams' father made earlier this week?
No, I have not.
So it was interesting. And the reason I bring this up is the Cardinals for all intents and purposes, look like they're going to be sitting number 1 overall type of drafting deal. Caleb Williams, the presumptive number 1, pick coming into the season. His father came out and said, "Hey, listen, we're not going to mess around with what the draft is and all of that. Caleb has 2 shots to enter the draft. If we don't like the team that's sitting there with the number 1 overall pick, we don't like the organization, that kind of stuff. We'll just go back into college one more year, and give us another shot there," which was one of those that I felt like that was a message for these teams that, hey, don't try and tank, don't try and sell the farm, because we don't want to go to an organization that's in a full rebuild, because y'all are trying to go out and get your quarterback there. And it was furthermore, his father went on to say that he had talked to Archie Manning about it, that Archie feeling that his career was shorter because of some of that. He talked to Baker, had talked to even Kyler at that point, and of course Lincoln Riley, kind of the connecting point between all of those and Williams. So it was interesting, just kind of listening to some of that conversation and reading some of that interview.
And while it makes sense, here's my I'm an old man now. Like, I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm an old man, and get off my lawn. Quit having your daddy be your freaking talking mouthpiece. Like, I couldn't stand this in basketball with the ball kids and their father, and all of them aren't even a glimmer of what they were promised to be coming out of college. And I'm not saying that Caleb Williams is going to follow down that path by any stretch. He's his own man, and he's going to do his own thing in the NFL compared to the NBA. But it really turns me sour when I see a 22-year-old have their daddy be their mouthpiece about stuff like this. Like, come on. Like, just, you guys can talk about it internally, and you guys can have that be your decision, and there's nothing wrong with that decision. But you guys are 2 games in to the collegiate football season. Why don't you guys worry about what he's doing at USC, right? Why don't you guys worry about trying to win the Pac-12 for the first time in how many years? Why don't you guys worry about trying to get to a bowl game that actually matters for the first time in 5 years? Why don't you guys worry about playing some defense when it matters most? Like, don't worry about what the NBA draft is going to do in April. Like, that's light years away.
Fair enough. I just I very much like the fact that it was, kind of putting teams on notice there, that if you want to go out in there and do this, you're gonna have to kind of come correct. No tanking for Tua type of thing.
No, tanking for Tua worked out. The Dolphins are playoff contenders.
It's true, but they also put together, like, talk about a team that went about building that thing. And just acquiring picks and all of that. Like,
absolutely. And like I said, that was my old man moment. I get it. Like, I do get it. I personally don't like it. Like, just shut up. Like, just let your kid play. Like, let your kid be a kid. He's in college right now, living the time of his life. He is, a deity on campus, right, at this point in what's going on. Let him do his thing. But in rebuttal, I'm going to say this. When's the last time a Lincoln Riley quarterback actually panned out in the NFL?
Yeah. Sure.
Right? Like, Kyler-ish, he can't stay healthy. Like, I mean, so I'm going to leave it with that, and I'm just going to be quiet and move on. Sorry.
No worries. All right, let's go ahead and hit up the last slate on the morning games for us. We've got the Houston Texans taking on the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore favored by 10. The over-under is 43.5 on this one. What are our thoughts here?
I'm going to shock the world here. The Texans are going to cover the 10. I don't know if it's that much of a shocker, but I do think week 1 double-digit covers are hard. right? And we have all these aspirations of what this Baltimore offense is going to look like and everything else. But they lost a lot on the back end. And I understand that there's a rookie quarterback playing for the Texans. But Dameon Pierce is no slouch, right? Like, we like Dameon Pierce. And the Texans' offensive line is pretty underrated, honestly. Like, it's not a bad offensive line. They may not be like Detroit Lions good or Philadelphia Eagles good, but Detroit's not. They're no slouches. So I think they're going to give Baltimore some fits on defense. Like, I think they're going to do some creative things. Dalton Schultz, I expect to be highly involved, help get the ball out quick. You have Nico Collins. I think Tank Dell is going to get a little bit more run than what most people. I know there's some people who really like him, but I think he's going to get a little bit more run than what a lot of people are probably giving him credit for. And the Ravens might easily control this game. Like, they might easily be able to keep it in, arm's length at a touchdown to 10 points through most of the game. But a backdoor cover feels about right for this one, doing someone dirty in week 1. So I'm taking the Texans to cover.
Yeah, I had a hard time with this one because I kept looking at this thing and I was like, same boat, right? Like, 10 points is ridiculously hard to cover it doesn't even matter if it's week 1 or it's week 18 anymore. Covering a 2-possession game is a tough call on that one anymore. And we've seen teams come up short on it more often than not. So you may have talked me into it. I was pretty sure I was going to go with the Ravens here, but I think you talked me into going with Houston here on the cover.
Baltimore narrative, right? Like, I don't. I'm not going to throw down to defend this point of view necessarily, right? So I'm not against the Baltimore narrative. I just, week 1, you're not necessarily trying to pour it on. Like, you're just trying to understand and build upon your offensive philosophy. And when you're putting in baseline building blocks, it's hard to get and keep 2-possession leads. You're spot on with that point.
So, you know what? I'll hop on the bandwagon with you and say that the Texans cover, just because I don't like that 10 point spread there. As far as the points on this thing, I think this one's going to come to the under on this one. Like you said, I think this is going to be one of those that Baltimore kind of comes out, controls the game kind of throughout here. But, Houston got new voice in the building. Nico Ryan. They've got a lot of new players down there. They've seemingly drafted their guys for the future, leaders of both the offense and the defense there, with picks 2 and 3. So I'm going to take the under on this one, though, just from the standpoint, it's not going to surprise me. We look up and see this thing get to about 21-14. Like, that feels about right on that one. And that's where I think this thing's going to play. I do like J.K. Dobbins for a prop on this one, going over 56.5 rushing yards. I think this is, again, one of those that Baltimore jumps out and they feed their running back pretty good all game long, just to kind of keep that clock moving and keep plugging and chugging that thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna take CJ Stroud under 196.5. Very much the same thing as Richardson, right? Rookie quarterback, first game, live bullets. He's going to see a lot of things that he didn't see in the preseason. Got to get acclimated to the speed. I think they're going to play it safe, and Stroud is going to be under 196.5.
Yeah, I could see that one. All righty, moving to the afternoon games here. We have the Green Bay Packers taking on the Chicago Bears. Chicago favored by 1. The over-under on this one, 43. Thoughts on this game?
I'm taking Green Bay here, and I like the over. Like, I think there's going to be a few more points here. I'm not convinced that Chicago's defense is going to be that airtight. Now, no Christian Watson, right, from what it sounds like. Dobbs is a little dinged up. I think we're going to see a lot of Luke Musgraves, but don't slouch on Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, right? Like, those two guys can do a lot of different things with their ability to run and receive out of the backfield. Jordan Love looked pretty stinking efficient in the preseason, I understand, but I'm I'm a believer in Jordan Love. Like I do like him this season. So I'm going to say the Packers not only cover, but they win this game outright. And I'm going to take the over. I think between Fields' legs, and which gave the Packers fits last year, and Jordan Love's ability to make just the right amount of plays, Green Bay is going to come away with the Week 1 victory.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Green Bay, finds a way to win this game. I do think that we're going to see the over. Yes, the Bears defense, seemingly kind of improved there, but yeah, this is one of those that's not going to surprise me that both of these teams get close. Both of these teams I see scoring over 20 points in this one, so it gets pretty easy to call for the over at that point there. One of the props that I really liked was Jordan Love going over the 213.5 passing yards.
I like that one a lot. I'm going to take a little bit of a deeper shot here. I'm going to say Darnell Mooney goes over 29.5. I think him and Fields connect on one big play, and he's able to get all this, in one shot.
Right. You mentioned Christian Watson. He is officially ruled out. Romeo Doubs is questionable coming into this one. So folks playing DFS type of lineups here, potential pivots that you can find some of those guys cheaper, things like that. Jaden Reed would be a guy that I wouldn't mind picking up for a DFS play. I think that he'll do some good things there. Luke Musgrave. I know that you were high on Luke Musgrave there. You called him out for the shine on the Tuesday show. That's another guy that I wouldn't mind slotting in the tight end type of thing. Kind of a cheaper play type of deal and spend up at other positions. So couple of DFS dart throws there I think we could see come out of this game here. All righty, let's go ahead and head on over to the Raiders coming out of Las Vegas, playing the Denver Broncos. Broncos favored by 3.5. The over-under is 44. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking the Denver Broncos. They traditionally have a really distinct home field advantage the first 3 to 4 weeks of the regular season, right? Teams have not been playing in altitude. They have not been in games and fully conditioned yet for a 60-minute football game, and they get gassed here at the end. I think the Broncos have an inherent advantage, at least in Week 1, and I think the skid against the Raiders ends on Sunday. So there's that, and I guess I'm also taking the under. I think the Broncos defense is good enough. Like I could see this game being, 21-17, 21-14, something of that nature. So Broncos win under.
Yeah, I about just put the Raiders down, so that way if the Broncos break my heart here on Sunday, I at least get the thrill of hitting that pick right. But I am going to take the Broncos. I think that we'll see just enough done to get to, and I'm kind of thinking right in that same point total there with that 21-17 type of matchup there. So I do like the under on this one. A lot of questions for both sides here, right? Like Denver's got the better defense. Vegas, a lot of questions, right? Like, what does Jimmy Garoppolo really look like? What does Josh Jacobs really look like after holding out all of the offseason here? What's he going to look like in, when it comes to football shape? And that's why I'm taking Josh Jacobs for the under 75.5 rushing yards.
I like that for those very reasons that you listed. I was thinking about that on the way home from the softball game tonight, about this game specifically, about Jacobs rushing prop and thinking under. So I co-sign. I'm going to take Cortland Sutton over 49.5. In this offensive philosophy, the X receiver typically dominates, right? We saw it with Michael Thomas. We saw it with Keenan Allen. That's the same role that Cortland Sutton is playing for these Denver Broncos. Jerry Jeudy is questionable, which makes this even kind of juicier because he is going to be the clear first option for Russell Wilson on Sunday. So I think he easily eclipses 50 yards.
Yeah, and Sutton was the guy I went looking for the props first, and I was having a tougher time finding them earlier today, and so I was like, well, Josh Jacobs, the guy that I'm looking to go under. So I do like the Sutton call on that one. Very much so. All right, let's go ahead and move on over to the Philadelphia Eagles. Wow, words are tough. Philadelphia Eagles taking on the New England Patriots. Philly is favored by 4. The over under 45. Thoughts on this one?
I'm taking the Eagles here. I think 4 points is kind of disrespectful for this Eagles team and how dominant they were on offense last year. First game of the season, typically the Patriots are slow starters as they build up throughout the season. So I think the Eagles are going to come out of the gates and really kind of smack it on them in New England. I'm going to take the under because I don't believe Mac Jones can score enough points to keep up. So it would not surprise me if this game was, something along the lines of 27-17, right? Like you might be just under, but I do think this game is under by the time it's all said and done with.
Fair enough. I'm going to take Philadelphia to cover, but I am a believer in the over on this one because I think Philly's going to get into the 30-point range themselves. Like it's not going to surprise me when we look up and see this one be like Philadelphia to get into at least 35 points. Like I could absolutely see that one happening here. So I'm going to take the over on this one. But it's funny that you mentioned Mac Jones. I am going to take a prop on Mac Jones, and that prop is under 227.5 passing yards.
Okay. I'm going to take DeAndre Swift under 32.5 rushing yards. I think that while he's going to be used, I think by this point, everyone's pretty well seceded the fact that this is a 3-headed monster at running back, plus you have Jalen Hurts. So it's going to be tough for these running backs to get consistent yardage. I think this might be Swift's more of a passing game, possibly. But I'm not going to believe in the rushing totals for Swift until I see him do it. So I'm going to make him prove it, and I'm taking the under.
I like it. Question coming in. Mr. COD Reaper, it actually just dawned on me as you typed that out there that I finally put the 2 to 2 together from the messenger to the YouTube handle here. So Kevin, the guy we were helping with his roster the last couple of days on over the messenger is Mr. COD Reaper. He was saying that the trade deal that he asked us about earlier with DK for Pierce and Olave, the dude backed out of it after he offered it up, and so that is too bad there because when that one came through, both of us were like, yep, smash yes with Pierce and Olave and send DK out and move on. You would have been sitting pretty good with that roster construct because you would have had Olave and T. Higgins as your wide receivers. And then I think you had Rashad White, Mostert, and Pierce would have been your running backs there. So that would have been a big improvement off of that. And you would have definitely been competing hard going down the stretch there.
Yeah. At this point, it may not be, depending on what else he has on his roster, it may not be worth just trying to do that. Like I like Olave more than DK straight up.
Me too.
Now, if he's offering that deal, clearly he wants DK. So maybe he's scared off of Pierce a little bit, but maybe depending on what else he has on his roster, there might be a second piece that he's more willing to part with if he wants DK that bad. So take a gander, either get us back here on the show or send us a snap of his roster there on Messenger. I know we've been kind of communicating back and forth there. And let's see if we can come up with a good counter since he backed out of that one, because I think we can take a piece that might be lesser than Dameon Pierce, but maybe better than something. He wants Everett more.
What does he want for Everett?
I'd do that deal. I still think I would give up Everett and
DK for Pierce and Olave. Yeah, smash yes.
And we can help you stream tight end all year long. Like I like Gerald Everett this year. Don't get me wrong. But I like Pierce and Olave more than I like DK and Everett, and we can help you stream tight end the rest of the year.
So
if that's something he's interested in, toss it out, see what he says.
Yeah, I would just counter that back and see if he'll do a deal with DK and Everett for Pearson Olave and move on with that one, because you'll be sitting there and you'll be able to rock and roll that, right? Like, as much as Kevin just said, as much as we both like Gerald Everett, you'll be set up to win at that one. I'm just kind of going through real quick, looking at.
Okay, so in all seriousness, Sam Laporta is sitting on that waiver wire.
Yes.
And with how he looked against the Chiefs, I think I think we are going to see him highly involved, at least for these first 6 weeks. So it is a short-term answer, but that's okay. Tight end streaming anyway. But it is a short-term answer for that hole that Everett would be leaving, is when waivers clear, on Tuesday night into Wednesday or Wednesday into Thursday, depending on how your league is set up. You pick up Laporta, and we'll find one of your guys that you can drop for him and run that out for next week and see if he can duplicate it.
Yeah, I'm still sifting through some of these. Yeah, Sam Laporta and Luke Musgrave both there.
So we'll know something right after Sunday, watching both these rookie tight ends and how they're gonna fit in.
Taysom Hill's out there, like you can stream Taysom.
God, no.
Well, you can see how that one looks and potentially stream him in spots, is what I was gonna say. Not your weekly guy there. Trey McBride is still out there, right? Like, you'll have some answers on Trey McBride and what that looks like in the Cardinals offense, but I think he's going to get some fair run as well. So, yeah, you've got a couple of options there that if you got to move off of Everett to make that deal, you move off of Everett to make that deal. Chiggy is still on the waiver wire, so you can absolutely rock and roll that. Logan Thomas is still out there. Not a bad option there.
He gets injured.
Well, yes, but you can ride him for a week or two.
Right. So, yeah, you got options is all we're trying to say. So if he's hell-bent on Everett, package Everett and DK, move on.
Yeah.
You were getting the better end of that deal.
Absolutely, and it's not close in my opinion. So
I agree.
All righty. So let's go ahead and head on over to the next matchup here. We have the Miami Dolphins and the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers favored by 3. The over-under on this one is 51. Thoughts on this matchup?
I'm going to take the Chargers at home. And I believe I'm taking the over here. I think this is the one game where I'm kind of believing in the high stakes scoring, if I'm making sure my notes are correct. Yes, I'm going to take the Chargers in the over. I think they win their home opener. This will be the highest scoring game of the week. And I don't know that it's going to be overly close by the time it's said and done with. Hell, I think this is one of 2 overs I took all week long. Like, I hit under everywhere. So take that for what it's worth. But I like the Chargers. Kind of a new look offense. I think they're on a little bit of a mission here to amend themselves from the disastrous collapse that they had in the playoffs last year against the Jaguars. And Herbert's kind of one of those dark horse quarterbacks to kind of elevate himself up to that next tier, to be really considered with, the top 3. And this is kind of the right offense to do it, because Kellen Moore loves to chuck the ball around.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on the over. I think this will be the highest scoring game of the week when it's all said and done. I'm going to be on the other side of that spread, though. I'm going to take Miami to head west and put up a good showing here. It would not surprise me to see Miami walk away with a week 1 victory on this one here. So much so, I'm also taking Tua to have a pretty darn good game, going over 252.5 passing yards in this one.
I like that. I want to take that Herbert prop so bad, but 290 is a massive number for week 1. Even with thinking that they're going to throw the ball around the yard. That's a pretty big number to start the season. So we are going to pivot, and we're going to take Austin Eckler over 32.5, right? We're going to test Kellen Moore's ability to get the ball in the hands of their playmakers. Austin Eckler is definitely one of those, and he is much better. He's much more efficient when receiving the ball than trying to run between the tackles. So we're going to try and put our money where our mouth is here and take Eckler over 32.5 receiving.
All righty. I like it. Let's see what Mr. Electric can do. That's a really good line, though. It's a really good line and really good prop there. I like it. All right, let's go ahead and hit up our next matchup here. We have the Los Angeles Rams facing off against the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks favored by 5. The over-under on this one, 46. Thoughts on this one?
I like the Seahawks at home to cover. The Rams, with being down Cooper Kupp, they're going to struggle to move the ball through the air, right? Like we've heard different things. I think Higbee is a great pivot for people who lost Travis Kelce earlier in the week. If he was on your waiver wire, I think Tyler Higbee's a great pivot. I think Van Jefferson is a sneaky flex play because those passing yards have to go to somebody, and there's been a lot of really good reports on Van Jefferson out of Rams camp this year. And at the moment, Matthew Stafford's healthy, and Matthew Stafford is a gunslinger, right? We know that. So that being said, the Seahawks do a pretty good job of, creating turnovers. Typically, that defense has been better than assumed or advertised about the last, 10 to 18 weeks of last year, 10 to 16 weeks after they started off the first week looking kind of rough. So Seahawks under ultimately, but they're going to cover.
Yeah, I like the Seahawks to cover on this one as well. I also like the under. I think you're right. Like this is one that the game that I'm glad that I'm just probably not going to be watching it when it's all said and done on Sunday. Like there's some questions that I want answered on these two teams and how they're going to look and how they're going to set up, but ultimately this is one that I think that Seattle will walk away with. I think we'll see the under on this one in a not very fun matchup to watch and I say that, and it's probably one of the most electric. So we'll see. One of the props that I really, really like on this one, Van Jefferson, you mentioned him earlier. Van Jefferson going over 41.5 receiving yards.
I was really hoping for a rushing prop for Zach Charbonnet, and we didn't get it. All right, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is on this one. Tyler Higbee over 45.5.
I could see it. I like that one a lot. Alrighty, let's go ahead and hit up the Sunday night matchup here. We got the Dallas Cowboys heading over to New York to take on the Giants. Dallas favored by 3.5. The over-under on this one is 46.5. Thoughts here?
I think New York overachieved a little bit last year. That being said, depending on where you're at, we locked this in at 3.5. You can find it on MGM at 3 right now, which I guess I like a little bit better because you have the push option. But I'm going to take the Cowboys. Home opener. We're going to see how this looks. Everybody's kind of fresh. I think they can find a way to win this game by, probably 6. But again, I'm taking the under. It's week 1. We're working some things out. We know this Cowboys defense is pretty good. I want to see what New York can do in the passing game. We know Saquon is dynamic, but I think even with him being dynamic, he can get yours for a fantasy perspective, and the Cowboys can still control that game for the most part is kind of how I see it. So I'm taking Dallas, and I'm taking the under.
Yeah, I like that call. I'm gonna tail you right there. So I'm gonna take Dallas as well to cover. I'm gonna take the under as well. I do think that this is one of those that, I'm not going to surprise me when we look up and we see this thing ending 24-21 type of deal, right? Like I think this will be a pretty close game, but I do think Dallas ends up walking away with this thing. One of the props that I really like, Tony Pollard over 18.5 receiving yards.
I'm glad you got that number where you have it, because I'm looking at MGM right now. It's bumped all the way up to 20.5.
Whoo!
So, and 2 yards, but when you're cutting hairs, right, doing prop bets, 2 yards it's a difference. So I like that 18.5 a lot.
Yeah, sometimes that 2 yards is the difference between an inch and a mile almost. So
yes, absolutely. There's a couple different ones that I actually like in this game. I like Brandon Cooks over 44.5. I like receiving. I like Saquon Barkley over 21.5 receiving. After they got him more involved in the passing game last year. I like Michael Gallup under 32.5 for this week. So there are a couple different things that are fun and here to start the season with. So I gave you a couple here. Get some bonuses in.
Pick the one that I'm tracking here.
Oh, sorry. You're going to track the Brandon Cooks over 44.5.
All right, I like it. All righty, let's go ahead and hit up that Monday night game. Highly anticipated Buffalo Bills taking on the New York Jets. Buffalo favored by 2.5. Over under on this one, 46.5. Thoughts on this matchup?
Taking the Jets. Home game, start the season, prime time, Aaron Rodgers. This team is kind of energized in a way that they haven't been in quite a long time, honestly, with what they're going to be able to do on offense. I think we're going to see an under here. Like, I think the Jets are going to be able to stymie the Buffalo offense a little bit. And I think that because ultimately it is the Jets, they're going to want to run the ball, right? You have Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall combination, we think, right? We're going to see how this truly plays out come kickoff. So I think that they're not going to ask Rodgers to, throw the ball 40 times by any means, but I do think it's going to be a bit more of a grind on Monday night to start the season. Nevertheless, I'm taking the Jets to cover. Hell, I think I'm taking the Jets to outright win. I would take them on the money line.
All righty. I'm not that bullish on the Jets. I'm going to call for the Bills to go in there and win Monday night here. So I'll take the 2.5 on the Bills here, or to cover the 2.5. So I think that they'll go in there and they'll get the job done in New York. I do think that we see some points in this one. I get both of these teams have some pretty good defenses. I think both of these teams, though, have some pretty dynamic offenses here as well that are going to find a way to get this done. So not going to surprise me when we see this thing, looking up and we watch this one come down to 20, 28, 24, 27, 24 type of thing. So I think that's about where we're going to see this. One of the props that I really like is James Cook over 43.5 rushing yards.
Okay. I'm going to take Gabe Davis under 46.5 receiving yards. He has historically not been very good against the Jets, and I think that continues on Monday night.
Fair enough. Yeah. So
I did say under, right?
Yes, you did say
under 46.5. Sorry, I got done with that, and for some reason I started thinking over. I'm like, no, that's not what I wanted.
I heard you say, my fingers when they were typing that heard the under. So
I appreciate your fingers.
There we go. I see what you did there. Alrighty. So we do have some questions coming in here. So we're going to hit that one up. Again, guys, if y'all have any questions, start sits, waiver wire type of picks, hit us up. Let us know. Let's go ahead and hit these things up and help y'all get your lineups set, ready to go for Sunday night, and Sunday morning, and Sunday afternoon, and Monday night. So lots of football up and coming. But if I am horrible with names, so if I mispronounce this, my apologies. But Jers on the Twitch is asking, with Christian Watson out, should I go Elijah Moore or Deion Jackson? So I'm assuming that this is going to be for a flex type of position here. I'm going to take the upside and shoot my shot with Deion Jackson.
Man. I'm going to go Elijah Moore only because I think the Jags are just going to stack the hell out of the box. I think that they're going to make sure that plays can't get outside, and they're going to have an extra man in the box and try and make Richardson prove that he can beat you with his arm before they back off that coverage. So I'm going to go with Elijah Moore, thinking that there's probably a higher upside that he falls into the end zone and kind of gets you those bonus points. So we're split here on this one. This is typically where we have Alex to break the tie, but he doesn't do the Friday nights.
You know what? Let's head in here real quick and let's just see what we can see on some props for both of these guys. And that'll also kind of help set the stage there a little bit from the standpoint that we'll be able to see what not only we're thinking about these guys, but what like Vegas is thinking on these guys.
You pick one guy and I'll pick the other, and we'll see where they're at.
Well, I'm on the Elijah Moore, or I'm on the Deion Jackson. You're on the Elijah Moore, so let's just rock and roll with that.
Okay. So they have Elijah Moore. The over-under is 32.5 receiving yards.
Okay.
And the anytime touchdown for Elijah Moore is plus 210.
Okay. I'm still getting old Deion Jackson pulled up here.
What in the world? No, I'm just messing.
I see how this is.
They do not have MGM does not have a rushing prop for Deion Jackson.
I'm looking even over at Betting Pros too, and they're not showing any
so
props.
Deion Jackson has a plus 105 anytime touchdown. So they're saying your odds are twice as good for Deion Jackson falling into the end zone as Elijah Moore.
Right.
But I do not have rushing or receiving numbers for him.
Okay. I know when I was doing my rankings on that, I did have Deion Jackson ranked over Elijah Moore. Some of that had to do with how Cleveland, how I think that this is going to roll out there. I think Elijah Moore is going to be their slot receiver, be the third wide receiver in 11 personnel to it. I think that you're going to see Cleveland not necessarily run a ton of 11 personnel out there on this one. So yeah, not going to surprise me. We look up and see that Elijah Moore is only on the field for 40-50% of offensive snaps when this thing's all said and done. Whereas with Deion Jackson, you're going to see him and Evan Hull in kind of an RBBC there, and Deion Jackson is the much better pass pro and much better receiving back than Evan Hull. So I like Deion Jackson's upside. He's got a better. We're assuming that he's got a better probability of falling into the end zone. Even if Jacksonville stacks the box on that, it could be a pretty good, run pass option type of thing that we see on this one. Or we see some check downs to Deion Jackson to try and get some time. So I think Deion Jackson, actually, I think I've kind of how I phrased this thing to the point where Deion Jackson probably gives you the safest floor between the two of those. Elijah Moore, I think, has more upside and more upshot.
I'm not going to fight you on it.
Okay.
I have them close, right? I have them close. Traditionally, I'm a sucker for running backs over receivers. If all things are created equal, this Colts team just scares me until I see him. So I'm really hedging all Colts bets at the moment. But if you want the floor and you just know that you want, 10 points? If you're just looking for 10 points, Deion Jackson's your guy. If you're looking for 17 points, you probably need to pivot to Elijah Moore to make sure your upside can get you there, because I don't think Deion Jackson will.
No, and I think that's a fair assessment. So, alrighty, let's go ahead and move on. Next question. Big Nick over on YouTube. DeAndre Swift, Brian Robinson, or Damian Harris? It's a very wide shot of Brian Robinson for me.
I co-sign. I'm taking Robinson over this group here for week 1.
Right, not even close. Right, like we just went through when we were doing that. I think you gave DeAndre Swift I think you took the prop of under.
Under 32.5. You took Robinson at over 43.5.
It was 58, I believe.
So yes, so I like Robinson. This Cardinals team is no good. They're just not. So I think Washington, especially being at home, where the other two running backs are on the road, game script does play in the favor of Swift and Robinson, maybe more so than Damian Harris. Right. Swift has more competition in the backfield. Damian Harris, we're going to see how he falls in it, or if he's more just of a goal line back. But I think Robinson, kind of between the 20s, is kind of your lead first and second down guy there in Washington. So I'm leaning him for week 1.
Actually, it wouldn't surprise me if Kenneth Gainwell in Philadelphia out fantasy points DeAndre Swift this week. Not going to surprise me if we look up and see Kenneth Gainwell with more fantasy.
It's possible. There's been a ton of hype around him.
Yeah. So yeah, Big Nick, hopefully that answers your question. We are lockstep on that one. Brian Robinson Jr. by a mile on those 3. So, guys, if you have any other questions, any other thoughts out there, make sure you throw them out there. Let's go ahead and talk about them. Get you guys set up, ready to go for your Sunday and Monday matchups here, so that you guys are walking away with those W's and starting that march towards cash and trophies. But while we wait and see if anybody has any other questions for us, any other thoughts here as we start wrapping up?
It was good to see football back on Thursday nights. I'm looking for this. This is a decent slate, right? There's a lot of questions in this slate of games. For a multitude of different reasons. So it is going to be a fun watch, right? Obviously, fantasy football, so you're super dialed into what's going on as far as the points go, but just being able to see what these teams really want to do throughout the season and what I guess what their play set's going to look like, right? What are they going to use as their bread and butter as far as offensive philosophies for some of these teams? We understand kind of what Cleveland's is going to look like. We know what Cincinnati's is going to look like for some of these teams, but I want to see the Jets break down. How much are they going to let Aaron Rodgers do what he wants to do? And how much is he going to kind of fall, I say fall in line. It's Hackett's offense, right? But they're still going to run that ball a good amount there. They paid Dalvin Cook a lot of money, and they spent a very high draft pick on Breece Hall. So they're definitely going to run the ball there for the Jets as well. And then see what these rookies look like under live fire.
I like it. Couple of questions coming in here. Any news on Judy, and when do you think he's golden week for him? So I'm assuming that means when do we think that he'll be back and when he'll be good to roll? Judy's still questionable heading into this matchup here.
He's questionable. Reports from Mike Kliss today is that Judy wants to play. Worked out, did walkthroughs today with the team. Obviously, they're going to see how, continued treatment, see how it feels tomorrow. Pre-game warm-ups, they're going to see how he feels, ultimately make a decision. Even if Judy does get onto the field, I think his usage is going to be extremely minimal. I don't think that they're going to have him out there for 60% of the snaps. He might be out there for 20% just for this week. So next week, possibly, right, as things keep progressing, sounds like they are coming along in the right way. But definitely a big scare, and especially because soft tissue injuries don't necessarily go away, right? Especially when you're trying to recover this quickly. So I would hold off this week. Let's see what happens. Get a little bit more information. Play it safe, right? And keep him on your bench, and then we're going to see what week one holds and how the week of practice next week goes.
Right. Yeah, and Mr. COD Reaper, that's the way that I would handle that, is keep him on the bench, just like Kevin was saying too, right? Like, this is one of those that, like he was saying, the hamstrings can linger, soft tissues can linger. There's a higher reoccurrence for re-injury to a hamstring as well. So, Cooper Kupp, we just saw him, early on in the preseason have a hamstring issue with a setback. McVay was coming out earlier today saying it, he may end up going onto the IR on this one. He's already been ruled out week one, could be headed to the IR. So this is one of those that you don't want to necessarily see these guys get rushed back here. And I think the Broncos will play that safe there and, kind of wean him back through. So even if he's out there, you're right, he's probably on a pitch count and not where you need to be banking fantasy success for this week. All right, Big Nick over on YouTube, Gabe Davis, George Pickens, Darnell Mooney, and Jacoby Myers. You got to pick two. I'm leaning Pickens and Myers on this one.
That's where I instantly go to as well, right? And none of these guys have plus matchups, but I think Myers being the off coverage against Denver, that receiver does typically have a bit more success. And I like George Pickens a lot. So I picked him on his over, what was it, 40, 42, 46 and a half.
Yeah.
And I know there's a spread like that when we covered that game, but I know I picked him to go over his receiving prop. So I like Pickens at home against the Niners. And I like Jacoby Myers as well. So cosign.
Yeah, so Pickens was the prop on that was 42.5 receiving yards. I know that you called for the under on the Gabe Davis matchup there, and Gabe Davis was 46.5 receiving yards. So, Gabe Davis, the name is there, and he certainly gives you the biggest ceiling of any of those guys there. is he could blow up, and we've seen that happen before where he has a 3-touchdown, 200-yard game. I don't see it happening this week. George Pickens, I think, will put up some decent points there. Darnell Mooney, I think the problem we were going through that was all of about 30 yards there. I don't think that he finds
29 and a half.
Yeah, I don't think he finds the end zone on this one. So Jacoby Myers, I think he can see some PPR work, and he can see some decent volume, decent yards. He may even fall into the end zone. So yeah, Pickens, Myers, pretty easy. Pretty easy call for me on that one. Is that corduroys? Is that how you say that?
Yeah,
all right.
I think so.
So corduroys over on Twitch. You know what folks are going to start doing? They're going to start coming up with the most bizarre spellings and pronunciation type of thing, just to watch me just flounder with it. Yeah. So trade question though, should I do DJ Moore and Darren Waller for T. Higgins and Njoku? I think it kind of depends on what you're wanting out of your roster and what your roster needs, right? So DJ Moore, Darren Waller packaged together, right? Like you're not, the best player in the deal is T. Higgins on that one. So you're trading up in tight end, trading down in wide receiver a little bit to go trade up in wide receiver, trade down a little bit in tight end there. So you could do the deal. I think I would rather have the DJ Moore, Darren Waller side of that trade, though. It's in the realm of fair for me, but
yeah, cosign. I think Darren Waller. I think Darren Waller's path, right, to create a positional advantage at tight end is pretty clear this season, right? We have made no bones about the fact that we think Waller is going to lead the Giants in all receiving metrics this year, right? It would not surprise me. Leading targets, receptions, touchdowns, yards potentially, right? Like more yards might be the one thing that's a little iffy, but I think he's the clear front runner for all of them as far as leading for the Giants. And I do think that helps create an advantage in a year where we've already seen Travis Kelce miss a game. George Kittle's nicked up already. And we'll see how Mark Andrews fits into Todd Monken's offense.
And Mark Andrews coming off of, he hasn't been practicing most of the offseason. Right? He's been nicked up too.
Absolutely. So I like the Darren Waller side. I think it is a clear advantage in that position where it's kind of hard to come by. And as long as Darren Waller stays healthy, I think that I agree with Derek. I would do the DJ Moore and Waller side as it sits right now. I understand the allure of T. Higgins and Njoku, and if this were Dynasty, I would say absolutely yes to T. Higgins and Njoku. But for redraft purposes, week one might be painful for DJ Moore with the Packers secondary, but he is going to get peppered with a lot of targets from Justin Fields this year, right? They're going to try and make Fields throw the ball more and not be as dependent on just his legs. That's why they traded or, moved out of that first pick, if you will, with Carolina and got DJ Moore in return for that. So they wanted him for a reason. So I think we let this play out and you use DJ Moore and Waller.
Right. Well, and I've made no bones about it saying it too. I think that Justin Fields takes that third-year leap that we see happen with a lot of quarterbacks here, and we see the arm talent truly come to play on this one. So, again, right, just adding more onto the sticking with that side. Big Nick over on YouTube. Value in Rashee Rice being in the KC offense, looking at you, Kadarius Toney, or better with a waiver swap if he gets hot. I think. Go ahead.
My current stance on all Chiefs wide receivers are: we can't overreact to one game. Kadarius Toney clearly had the opportunities to succeed. Rashee Rice was only on the field for 17% of offensive snaps. Now, he got the touchdown. He had another big grab in the second half and ran up the sideline, so he did make the most of his opportunities. And could continue to progress and become a thing, but I'm not going to overreact over anything the Chiefs offense did in week one. We cannot do that. So if you already have Tony on your roster, I think for now you need to keep him on your roster. If you already have Rashee Rice, you sit on him and you see how he progresses for another week or two, and then we can make an assessment once we have a true sample size. So the value of Rashee Rice is in all reality, he is a wide receiver 4 with top end wide receiver 3 upside. Like, he's not going to see 7, 8, 9 targets a game. He's going to see 2, 3, 4 targets a game, and he has to continue to do the most he can with those. So Andy Reid trusts him to stay on the field when it matters most.
Right. And don't forget, social media's darling Justin Ross didn't really see the action last night. So
he should have. He was the most dynamic receiver the Chiefs had.
Yes. So again, right, like this is one of those that's, and you and I were both pretty high on Kadarius Toney during the offseason before he got dinged up and injured there.
Yep. He got injured. We jumped right off of that though.
Yes.
So it'll be different with Kelsey back too.
Right. And the talent is there for Kadarius Toney, right? Like he's not necessarily the guy that's going to go out and be your X in the offense, be your true alpha wide receiver, especially in Kansas City's offense. That role is reserved for Travis Kelce, and for good reason, right? But Kadarius Toney can get a lot of work and do some very big things there, when he's the second target on that and he's the second weapon on that one there. So I think that we see him get better. Like some of that very well could be some of the drops that we saw. Some of that could be simply from the time that he missed, he was out 3 weeks during the preseason there and really missed a lot of time through that one. So
I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he had a really good point. He said Kadarius Toney is like a poor man's Dez Bryant.
Yeah.
In the regards that when he's on, he is dynamic, and you want every part of that, right? We saw that against the Cowboys 2 years ago in his rookie season. But when he's off, he's dropping balls that he shouldn't. He gets in his own head and can't seem to get out of it, a la last night. Dez Bryant's was a better player overall than Toney is. Like, I'm not trying to say that they're apples for apples. That's kind of a poor man's version, right? Kadarius Toney, there's a reason he fluctuated in the draft so much, is because no matter who you are, whether you're a entry level player or whether you're a seasoned veteran in fantasy football and you're statting out plays and everything else, he is more difficult to get a read on. Now I'll tell you, the Chiefs spent a second round pick on Rice. They traded a 6th for Toney, right? So that, again, apples to oranges a little bit, but that tells you where they think the value was. They think Rice has the potential to be better long-term.
Fair enough. All right. Another question coming in from Eric on YouTube. Dalvin Cook or Jordan Addison for the flex? Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, Cook week 1.
Yeah, not close in my opinion here.
I'm not playing a rookie wide receiver against Tampa Bay secondary week 1.
Right. Even if he's on a high-powered Vikings offense that's going to sling the ball all around and doesn't have to take the primary coverage. Like, I get all of the reasons that you can try and talk yourself into Jordan Addison. It's Dalvin Cook. Pure and simple, right? Like, Dalvin Cook will eat in that offense. He'll get a lot of rushing attempts. I really think that we see the Jets almost have Breece Hall in a pitch count type of thing here to start this season off. He's coming off of a major injury. Dalvin Cook's a guy that they brought in, they signed to make a run on this thing, and I think we see a transition happen partway through the season where Breece Hall takes over the backfield here again. But to start the season, it's Dalvin Cook's show, and Aaron Rodgers does not mind checking himself down the ball to the running backs, especially running backs that can prove that they can catch the ball and are dynamic after the catch, which guess what Dalvin Cook is. So, this is an easy Dalvin Cook for me.
Cosign for this week, and for everything you just said. Right now, Cook is the 1A because they're going to make sure Breece Hall stays right. I do not trust any rookie wide receiver in week 1 until we get live game film on him. I'm not Not Addison, not Quentin Johnston, not JSN. Rasheed
Not
Rice,
Zay Flowers.
anomaly, not Zay Flowers, right? So we have one rookie wide receiver with, what do you end up with? 2 catches. Rasheed Rice had 2 catches, and one of them happened to fall into the end zone. That was great. It's awesome for him. I'm sure his parents are super proud of him. But I'm not playing rookie receivers until I get a feel for what they're actually supposed to be doing out there.
You know, the place to play, if you've got an itch that you have to play a rookie receiver, DFS is your place, right? Like, and that was the thing, right? Like players that played Rasheed Rice and in DFS lineups last night did phenomenal, right? Because the entry cost was super low. You're able to spend up on other players such as Amon-Ra or David Montgomery or Jared Goff or Patrick Mahomes, and you're able to offset that a little bit, and then he produced for you. But there's just as equal of a chance that Mahomes looks another way on either one of those plays, and he doesn't have a very good game. So if you're wanting to play a rookie, DFS is your place to do it, especially from the standpoint that you can, right? Like a lot of guys aren't necessarily looking at the rookies. A lot of other folks aren't doing it, so it can be a bit of a difference maker for you on that one. So, All right. Big Nick over on YouTube, Dalton Kincaid or Dalton Schultz? It's Schultz by a mile for me. Not playing a rookie in week 1. Not playing a rookie where he's also got a seasoned vet in Dawson Knox that could rock and roll that. And I think Dalton Schultz is going to be a very important part of keeping CJ Stroud upright this week.
If you need a floor, it's Dalton Schultz. If you need a high ceiling play, it's Kincaid.
There you go. Split decision.
Yeah. So that's how I would define it. I think Schultz, you're going to get, 4 receptions, 6 targets for 50 yards. Something of that. You hope one of them falls into the end zone. Kincaid, I mean, it could be like Sam Laporta, who looked really good, but realistically, he got you what, 8.5, 9 fantasy points, something like that. So, it wasn't a mind-blowing performance, but it was good for Sam Laporta's first week. Dalton Kincaid is a nice pivot again in DFS, especially if you're doing like a showdown slate or something like that, because so many people are going to go after the big names in that Bills-Jets game. They're going to kind of mess around here a little bit. So it depends on your roster construction and how you feel about your chances are. If you just need points because you feel like you're in a good position with your lineup, then take Dalton Schultz. If you feel like you need a bit of home run power and you're kind of up against it here in week 1 and you need a big performance out of somebody, I think Kincaid's your high ceiling guy.
Fair enough. That I can get behind. I can see that one, and I can co-sign on the ceiling play there. So I like it. COD Reaper saying Sky Moore needs more looks.
Sky Moore can't get separation.
Yes.
Like, I mean, he dropped a pass too, and then there was a couple where the defender basically ran through him, around him, because Moore couldn't get enough separation. So, yes, maybe he needs more looks. He will naturally get them when the safety and linebacker are both paying attention to Kelsey in his own defense, and they're not just keyed into whichever receiver's kind of running into the gap. So he will get those looks. Travis Kelsey needs to be healthy.
Yes. Yeah, that's one of those. Travis Kelsey fixes a lot of sins on the offense there. Right?
Absolutely.
Apparently
a ton.
Yeah. So, alrighty. Well, guys, that's we're going to go into final thoughts here. If you have any questions, last second things, throw them out there. Let's get those answered, get you guys set up. But Kevin, any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
A couple new names, which are great to see. Again, please like and subscribe. We appreciate the questions. We are more than happy to help out how we can. We are active on all of our socials at Good Old Boys FF. You see all of them here in the nice little picture at the bottom of the screen. Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the things. We will be around our technology for the pretty much all weekend long as we're trying to consume as much football as humanly possible before our wives leave us. But yeah, week 1, here we go, right? This is what we've been building up towards. Draft season was awesome, gets the blood flowing. Yes, it's my favorite time, but don't get me wrong here. I appreciate the grind, right? And we know that this starts the grind to get you into the fantasy playoffs and hopefully a fantasy football championship to earn you some cash and trophies.
I like it. Well said. Let's go get it. And again, right, do not miss out. Head over to the YouTube, youtube.com/@goodoldboysff. Click that subscribe button, ring that bell. We are, besides going live for y'all a couple times a week, right? We go live every Tuesday night, 11 p.m. Eastern, Friday night, 11 p.m. Eastern, rock and roll in those live shows and answering questions for that. We're also putting out a lot of content for you as well, right? We've got the Pine and Shine individual videos that we rock and roll with to help you guys out there. We'll have some waiver wire type of content. We'll be going through and that's something that you guys can comment down below if you want to see that. Do you guys want to see so like a ranking type of show almost, or a ranking video where go through and kind of walk through some of the different ranking type of things there? So just some ideas out there. Comment that out there. Let us know how we can best help you out there as well. So that's going to do it for us. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.